Omagyanatimirandasya Namsana Shnakya Saksvan Vitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Recording in progress.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namini Namaste Saraswata Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Srinyavadi Paskachai Desatarani Srila Prabhupada Ki. So I'm happy to be again with you for a few chapters of the 11th canto, a very exciting canto that in the chapter 7 and 9 before, we have very much heard about detachment. So we see that Dattatreya, he was so detached that he just fixed his mind on the Supreme Lord and did not deal with the material world at all. So how to come to the level of this detachment, that is the issue that comes up next. Chapter 10 starts in a practical sense, starting with Varnashram. You may remember in the first canto, second chapter, we had a few verses, and these verses give the knowledge what is more deeply explored here in the 10th chapter. That Srimad Bhagavatam 1 to 8 Dharmas vanustitapum sam vivakshane kata suryat not padayat yatiratim shama eva ekevalam. If our activities do not lead to attracting us to the Supreme Lord, shama eva ekevalam, useless. 1 to 9 Dharmasya yapavargasya nachtretaya kalpane nachtasya dharmakantasya kamalabhaya ismitaha. So occupational duties are not for sense gratification. Real religion is not for sense gratification. That detachment from sense gratification, that's the purpose. Taking the gradual path, and then one will come to a certain point to bhakti. That is explained here in this chapter. The purpose is to come to karma yoga. The soul does not identify with the body. So the purpose of Varnashram is liberation. So the chapter 10 starts with Varnashram, act according to your nature. And then the results come, and be detached from the results. Because by being detached from the results of one's works, one can go to the next level of the yoga ladder. One can go from karma to jnana. And then we will hear in the 11th chapter that how detached karma yoga leads to bhakti, and how karma yoga's purpose is to lead to bhakti. And then we will hear of chapter 12. The 12th chapter speaks about the topmost position of the residents of Vrindavan, what is beyond liberation. And in the Uddhav Gita, Lord Krishna gives more emphasis how everything leads to bhakti. So that's a summary of chapter 10 to 12. But let's now look a little more deeper in chapter 10. So you have mainly two parts in this chapter. So the first part will speak about that varnashram, everyone must walk according to his own natural qualities, that one should give up work performed for sense gratification. At the same time, one should accept the spiritual master and learn the truth from him, and receive knowledge, and give up of being envy and talking nonsense, then understand that the soul is distinct from the subtle material bodies. So we are acting in this world according to the reactions of our past lives. That we get reactions that by that one gets real knowledge. And in the second part of this chapter today, which we will discuss probably tomorrow, is the refutation of the Karma Mimamsa theory from Chaimini, that this philosophy states that the highest is to act out of duty in this life and create a nice next life. So, but when one accepts this philosophy, which states that one goes birth after birth, and get reactions, there is no possibility that one who is attached to the fruits of material world, that he can achieve any substantial goal in life. That going to heaven is only for a short time, and is finished, you come back to the mortal sphere. So that path of materialism doesn't give us happiness, and it is interrupted. So that's the summary of this chapter. So first I've situated how it refers to the previous chapters, what we are going to do now, that dealing with the issue that comes up next, how to come to this level of detachment of this avaduta, Dattatreya, and in chapter 10 we learn about the first steps how to do that. So we will read text 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Bhagavan Vatsamayodita Savahita Svadharmesu Madasraya Varnashrama Kulacharam Akamatma Chamacharat. Someone can read the translation and the purport, please.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, taking full shelter in me, with the mind carefully fixed in the devotional service of the Lord as spoken by me, one should live without personal desire and practice the social and occupational system called varnashram. Purport. In the previous chapters, Lord Krishna described through the story of an Avadhuta Brahmana the qualities and character of a saintly person. Now the Lord describes the practical means for achieving such a saintly position. In the Pancharatra and other scriptures, the Personality of Godhead gives instructions for executing devotional service. Similarly, in Bhagavad Gita 4.13, the Lord says, Chaturvarnya maya shishtam guna karma vibhagasha. I have personally created the varnashram system. There are innumerable rules and regulations in the varnashram system, and the devotee should execute those which do not contradict the process of devotional service. The term varna indicates different classes of human beings, some in the mode of ignorance, some in the mode of passion, and some in the mode of goodness. Devotional service to the Lord is executed on the liberated platform. and therefore some injunctions for those persons in passion and ignorance may be contradictory to the regulative principles for those on the liberated platform. Therefore, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, who is non-different from the Lord, one should execute the basic principles of Varnashram in a way favorable for the advancement in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. It's interesting, there are innumerable rules and regulations in the Varnashram system, and the devotee should execute those who do not contradict the process of devotional service. So there are seemingly rules and regulations that contradict the process of devotional service. That someone has an idea what these rules and regulations could be in the Varnashram that contradict devotional service. Anyway, we can discuss that because we will go on for 1 hour now till 4 p.m. Then have a 10-minute pause, and then after that we will have discussion. So keep that in mind. Text 2. Aviksheta vishuddhatma teinam visayatmanam punesu tatvadyanena sarvaramba viparjayam. Can someone read the translation, please?
A purified soul should see that because the conditioned souls who are dedicated to sense gratification have falsely accepted the objects of sense pleasure as truth, all of their endeavors are doomed to failure.
Thank you, Paul. Yes. They have falsely accepted the objects of sense pleasure as truth. Yes. I will now read the purport of Bhaktivedanta Maharaj on the first text and the second. Despite executing one's duties as prescribed by the Vedas and rejecting all prohibited activities, if one does not take shelter of me, then this endeavor is ultimately useless. On the other hand, if one engages in my devotional service without deviation, there is no necessity for performing the religious duties prescribed in the Vedas. So there are religious duties prescribed in the Vedas. For householders, the performance of the Agnihotra sacrifice every day, and so many things. Read, and then text 2. Bhaktivedanta says, when the conditioned souls come to realize the utter futility of their endeavors to enjoy the temporary manifestation of this world, they certainly become detached. So this futility of material endeavors, we will hear that especially in the second part of this chapter, the philosophy of Jaimini, that is a problem. That's text 3. Suptasya visaya loko dhyayato manorataha nana makatva vifadas tata betatma dirgunai. When we're sleeping, may see many objects of sense gratification in a dream. Yeah, I'm reading, but maybe some of you can read. That then we do it together.
One who is sleeping may see many objects of sense gratification in a dream, but such pleasurable things are merely creations of the mind and are thus ultimately useless. Similarly, the living entity who is asleep to his spiritual identity also sees many sense objects. But these innumerable objects of temporary gratification are creation of the Lord's illusory potency and have no permanent existence. One who meditates upon them, impelled by the senses, uselessly engages his intelligence.
So, short purport of Bhaktivedanta, so something else. The sense object observed in one's dreams are of no value, just as the objects seen in the waking state are ultimately useless because they are temporary. Yes. Very short summary. Text 4. Nivrittam karma seveta pravrittam matparaschayat Signasayam sampravito nadayat karma chodanam. Translation, please.
One who has fixed me within his mind as the goal of life should give up activities based on sense gratification and should instead execute work governed by the regulative principles for advancement. Then, however, one is fully engaged in searching out the unlimited truth of the soul, one should not accept the scriptural injunctions governing fruitive activities.
So that problem we heard already in the first canto, where Srila Vyasadeva is chastising, where Narada Muni is chastising Srila Vyasadeva about all his writings of Karma Kanda, that should give up activities based on sense gratification. So Bhaktivedanta. There is no need for those who are engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord to perform fruitive activities with a desire to enhance their worldly enjoyment. One should remain aloof from the activities of sense gratification and instead engage in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Engagement in devotional service to the Supreme Lord is real freedom from material desires. The paths of sense gratification and renunciation are always full of contradictions, whereas the service of the Supreme Lord is a doubtless path of perfection. So, So here a distinction is made in the realm of what is moral and what is immoral. Maybe Yudhishthira Maharaj was following all these rules of Dharma very strictly. So the Varnashram duties and karma, so we should follow the appropriate injunctions of the scripture that don't bring material enjoyment. The focus should be making advancement in spiritual life. So that is the point made here. So text 5. Yamana Bhikshnam Sevetan Yaman Mat Parakvachit Mattabhihyam Gurum Santam Upashita Mat Atmakam. So can someone read text 5, translation and purport, please?
One who has accepted me as the supreme goal of life should strictly observe the scriptural injunctions forbidding sinful activities, and as far as possible, to execute the injunctions prescribing minor regulative duties such as cleanliness. Ultimately, however, once you approach a bona fide spiritual master who is full of knowledge of me as I am, who is peaceful, and who, by spiritual elevation, is not different from me.
We are hearing about spiritual injunctions that avoiding sinful activities that approach the spiritual master. So can someone read the purport, please, of text 5?
The word yaman refers to major regulative injunctions necessary for preserving one's purity. In the Krishna consciousness movement, all bona fide members must give up eating meat, fish, and eggs, and they must also avoid intoxication, gambling, and death. The word avijnan indicates that one cannot at any time perform such forbidden activity, even in difficult circumstances. The word niyaman refers to less obligatory injunctions, such as bathing thrice, 3 times daily. In certain difficult situations, one may not bathe 3 times daily, yet may still maintain one's purification. But if one engages in sinful, forbidden activities, even in difficult circumstances, there undoubtedly will be a spiritual problem. Ultimately, as explained in Updeshamrita, mere adherence to rules and regulations cannot give one spiritual perfection. One must approach a bona fide spiritual master who is mat abhijna, or in full knowledge of the personal form of God. The word mat, that is me, negates the possibility of a bona fide spiritual master having an impersonal conception of the absolute. Furthermore, the Guru must be in complete control of his senses. Therefore, he is called Shant or peaceful. Because of being completely surrendered to the mission of the Lord, such a spiritual master is Madatmakam, or non-different from the personality.
Thank you. So Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj concludes, if one is indifferent to the service of Lord Hari, of the service of one's Guru, or the service of the Vaishnavas, one can never achieve eternal benefit. So the conclusion is, one must be serious in spiritual life and accept the Guru. Text 6. Amanyamatsaro daksho nirmamo drita sarida ashatvaro rita jihnasu anasayo amogavat. So can someone read the translation, please?
The servant or disciple of the spiritual master should be free from false prestige, never considering himself to be the doer. He should be active and never lazy, and should give up all senses of proprietorship over the objects of senses, including his wife, children, home, and society. He should be endowed with the feelings of loving friendship towards the spiritual master and should never become deviated or bewildered. The servant or disciple should always desire advancement in spiritual understanding, should not envy anyone, and should always avoid useless conversation.
So,
Purport.
no, there's no need for the purport. So now the qualities of the disciple and the path that he's following are described. So the duties of a disciple. First, it is said here, not expect any respect for himself. That's first. Second, not envy anyone. Third, he should be expert, it is said here. 3. One should be free from material attachment. 5. eager to engage in devotional service and attain the goal of life. 6. Not find fault with others. 7. Avoid idle talks. A lot of instructions in this verse. So one should not forget the purpose of life and become attracted to the object of the senses, or become bewildered and go in the wrong direction. So that brings up for us, we can discuss that after the pause. What do I really want? Do I want these things? To develop these qualities? Am I developing these qualities? Yes. Text 7. Chayapatyahiya kshetra svachanara vinadishu udashina samam pasyan sarvasartam ivatmana. Can someone read the translation, please?
One should see one's real self-interest in life circumstances and should therefore remain detached wife, children, home, land, relatives, friends, wealth, and so on.
Yeah, see oneself real interest in life. So, okay, now we will read, and now I will go back to the 6th canto, just a moment. 6th canto, content, canto 6, chapter 16, King Sita Ketu meets the Supreme Lord, text 6 and 7. I read the translation of these verses 6 and 7. Just as gold and other commodities are continually transferred from one place to another in due course of purchase and sale, so the living entity, as a result of his fruitive activities, wanders throughout the entire universe, being injected into various bodies in different species of life by one kind of father and another. Then 7. A few entities are born in the human species, and others are born as animals. Although both are living entities, their relationships are impermanent. An animal may remain in the custody of a human being for some time, and then the same animal may be transferred to the possession of other human beings. As soon as the animal goes away, the former proprietor no longer has any sense of ownership. As long as the animal is in his possession, he certainly has affinity for it. But as soon as the animal is sold, the affinity is lost. So this gives us the perspective of what happens in life. We should use, we can use that as a reference. So here also we go back to our verse of today. Here, verse 7 we just read. So here further duties of a disciple are discussed. First is not think himself the enjoyer of his wife, children, house, land, friends, and other possessions, knowing to be intended for the Lord's service. So that we can say it's quality number 8 of the disciple. And 9, not try to demand respect from others to enjoy fame and reputation. 10, become free from envy. that laziness and material attachment. 10. So one should be inquisitive, devoid of pride, truthful, and steady in determination. A lot of qualities are discussed here of a disciple. Text 8. Vilakshana stuta stula suksmat deat atmekshika svadrik shataknir darno dayat dahakonya prakashaka. Can someone read the translation, please?
Just as fire, which burns and illuminates, is different from the firewood, which is to be burned to give illumination. Similarly, the seer within the body, the self-enlightened spirit soul, is different from the material body, which is to be illuminated by consciousness. The spirit soul and the body possesses different characteristics and are separate entities.
Thank you. So it is said here that this verse number 8 illustrates how the spirit soul is distinct from the body. And I will read 2 lines of the commentary of Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj. In the conditioned state, the spirit soul is compared to fire that is dormant within wood in the conditioned state. When the conditioned soul is enlightened on the strength of his spiritual knowledge, he can burn his ignorance to ashes, just as fire burns wood. So this is a simple philosophy, that we are the consciousness, the soul in the body, and it's practically spoken of here. This simple philosophy that we are the consciousness, not the spirit soul, is practically not spoken of in any other religion. That's a problem. The soul is eternal, the body is temporary. If we don't understand that there is that point, and there is no point of talking about where we want to go. The soul and body have different characteristics, and that must be understood. Text 9. Nirodopachyano brihan nanatvam tatkitan gunan antapavishta adata evam dea gunan para. Can someone read the translation, please?
Just as fire. Go ahead.
Good. Just as fire may appear differently as dormant, manifest, weak, brilliant, and so on, according to the condition of the fuel, similarly, the spirit soul enters a material body and accepts particular bodily characteristics.
So yes, I have 2 lines here from the purport of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj. If intellectually one identifies himself with various materialistic philosophies of life, he becomes covered by the subtle mind. When the living entity realizes that he is part and parcel of the Absolute Truth, Lord Krishna, he becomes Nirupadhi, free from material designations. So that is the constitutional position. We go to text 10. Yasaguna viachito deyam purusasyahi samsarastan nibatnoyam pumsofitya chitat manaha. Translation, please.
The subtle and gross material bodies are created by the material mode of nature, which expands from the potency of the Supreme Personal Godhead. Material existence occurs when the living entity falsely accepts the qualities of the gross and subtle body as being one's own illusory state. However, one can be destroyed by real knowledge.
Yeah, can you read? Can someone also read the purport of text 10, please?
Regarding the analogy comparing fire and its fuel to the soul and the body, one may argue that to some extent fire is dependent upon its fuel and cannot exist without it. Since we do not experience the existence of fire independent of fuel, one may therefore still question how it is possible for the living entity to exist separately from the body, become covered by it, and eventually become free from it. Only through the Supreme Personality of Godhead's knowledge potency, Vidya, one can clearly understand the nature of the living entity. By Vidya or real knowledge, one may cut material existence to pieces and even in this lifetime experience spiritual reality. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, our material existence is an artificial imposition. By the Lord's inconceivable potency of Ikshana, the qualities of gross and subtle material forms are psychologically imposed upon the living entity, and because of misidentification of the body, the living entity initiates a series of illusory activities. As explained in the previous chapter, the present material body is like a tree that produces the karmic seed of the next body. However, this cycle of ignorance can be cut to pieces by the transcendental knowledge of the being by God. Unfortunately, the conditioned souls, being inimical to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, do not accept the perfect knowledge spoken by God. Instead, they remain absorbed in thought and speculation. But if the living entity accepts the Lord's knowledge, his whole situation can be rectified, and he can return to his original, eternal, blissful life of perfect knowledge in the direct path.
Thank you. So we see here, in the first verses of this chapter, we heard about Varnashram. One acts as a human being in the Varnashram and accepts the spiritual master who explains Shastra. And what happens then? Real knowledge comes and destroys illusion. So in the previous verse we heard how the doubt was removed, that it may be assumed that the existence of the soul is dependent on the gross and subtle bodies. So real knowledge destroys illusion. And all these sections now, they are coming from the jnana viewpoint. They are going into jnana. After karma, after varnashram, we come to jnana. So this knowledge pulls one out of the body conception, and one's perspective and understanding of meaningful activities has changed completely. What is meaningful for a man in body consciousness is different than that of what has meaning for one in spiritual consciousness. 11. Tasma jignasayatmanam atmastam kevalam param samgamya nirashate vastu buddhim yata kamam. Can someone read the translation, please?
Therefore,
Therefore, by the cultivation of knowledge,
one should approach the Supreme Personality Godhead situated within oneself by understanding the Lord pure transcendental existence. One should gradually give up the false vision of material world as independent reality.
Thank you. That the false vision of the material world as independent reality. Yeah, but it said in Yata Kramam. At the end, Yata Kramam. Yata Kramam, readily step by step. This means that after first realizing oneself to be different from the material body, one should then progressively detach oneself from material mental activities. Correctly seeing means seeing that all things are emanations from the Absolute Truth. When one correctly identifies oneself as an eternal spiritual form, one achieves the real fruit of knowledge. When we falsely assume that temporary, illusory material objects are real, knowledge of our eternal spiritual form is covered by ignorance. If one meditates upon the Lord's Supreme Presence within everything, one can return to the normal blissful state of spiritual life. So Bhaktivedanta Saraswati writes, gradually on the strength of one's sadhana, one should rise above the conception that the material body is the self. 12. Acharyorani rajasyat antevasuttararani tatsandanam pravachanam vidyasande sakavaha. Can someone read the translation, please?
The spiritual master can be compared to the lower Kindle stick, the disabled to be upper Kindle stick, and the instruction given by the Guru to the heart stick placed in between. The transcendental knowledge communicated from Guru to disciple is compared to the fire arising from the contact of these, which burns the darkness of ignorance to ashes, bringing great happiness both to Guru and disciple.
Thank you. Yes, that transcendental knowledge communicate from Guru to disciple is compared to fire arising from the contact of these, that it burns away our ignorance. 13. So this 13 is the last version of this Jnana section here. Vaisarati sati visuddha buddhir tunoti gunasam pasutam punam sasandaya yat atmanita svayam sasamyat asamichatahni. Someone read the translation, please.
By submissively hearing from an expert spiritual master, the expert disciple develops pure knowledge, which repels the onslaught of material illusion arising from the three modes of material nature. Finally, this pure knowledge itself ceases, just as fire ceases when the stock of fuel has been consumed.
Yeah, that means all this transcendental knowledge is to help realize that we are not a body, that we are a spirit soul, but once you are liberated, you are realized your position as eternal servant of the Lord. No meaning anymore. But let's read also the purport. Can someone read the purport, please?
The Sanskrit word Vaisaradi means that which is derived from the expert Visharada. Perfect transcendental knowledge comes from the expert spiritual master. And when such knowledge is heard by the expert disciple, disciples, it curbs the waves of material illusion. Since the Lord's illusionary energy acts eternally within the material world, there is no possibility of destroying illusion. One may, however, destroy the presence of illusion within one's own heart. To accomplish this, the disciple must become expert in pleasing the expert spiritual master. As one advances to the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness, experiencing the presence of the Lord everywhere, one's attention shifts to the transcendental platform. At that time, pure knowledge itself, one's constant technical awareness of illusion, diminishes just as fire diminishes and it is extinguished after consuming its stock of fuel. Srila Madhvacharya had quoted from several Vedic scriptures to show that Maya or material illusion is just like a witch who always haunts the conditioned souls. Maya offers the conditioned souls whatever they like within the three modes of nature, but such offerings are just like fire that burns the heart to ashes. Therefore, one must understand that the material world is a hellish place, offering a permanent situation to no one. Externally, we experience many things, and internally, we contemplate our experience, formulating plans for future action. Thus, internally and externally, we are victims of ignorance. Real knowledge comes from Vedas or the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His form of perfect wisdom. If we become fully Krishna conscious, taking complete shelter of the Lord, there will be no scarcity of pleasure because the Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure and His devotees freely move within that presence.
Mhm. Relationship between external and internal ignorance. Interesting. So this is the teaching of Nivritta Marg. The Nivritta Marg is a path which teaches detachment, liberation, and that detachment and liberation comes from knowledge. And this Nivritta Marg is opposed to the Karma Kanda sections of the Vedas. And now we will hear an explanation of the Vedic philosophy, the Purvamimamsa. And the Purvamimamsa explains that the purpose of Varnashram is piety, so that you can continue to enjoy. That's so Krishna now will personally speak against this philosophy to Buddha, text 14:16. That Ataisam karma kartrinam bhaktrinam sukadukhayo anatvam ataniyatvam lokakala gamatmanam manyase sarvabhavanam samstaiti atpatikiyata tattatakete bedena jayate vidyate sade evam api anga sarvesam denam deyayogata kalavayavata santi bhavachanmadayo sakrit. Someone read, please.
My dear Uddhava, I have thus explained to you perfect knowledge. There are philosophers, however, who challenge my conclusions. They state that the natural position of the living entity is to engage in fruitive activities, and they see him as the enjoyer of the happiness and unhappiness that occur from his own work. According to this materialistic philosophy, the world, time, the revealed scriptures, and the self are all variegated and external, existing as a perpetual flow of transformations. Knowledge, moreover, cannot be one or eternal, because it arises from the different and changing forms of objects. Thus, knowledge itself is always subject to change. Even if you accept such a philosophy, my dear Uddhava, there will still be perpetual birth, death, old age, and disease, since all living entities must accept a material body subject to the influence of time.
Thank you. Now we have the purport here that so can someone read the second, third, and fourth. So you start here with according to the followers of Jaimini, and you read until 1, 2, 3, until here in the same form.
According to the followers of Jaimini, the living entity is originally and naturally a performer of votive activity, and his happiness and distress are derived from the fruits of his own work. The world in which the living entities find their enjoyment, the time during which they enjoy, the revealed scriptures that explain the means for achieving enjoyment and the subtle bodies through which the living entities experience enjoyment all exist not only in manifold variety, but also eternally. The living entity need not develop detachment from material sense gratification, either by seeing the temporariness of individual material objects and situations, or by seeing the material world as an illusory creation, Maya. According to such materialistic philosophy, material objects such as garlands, sandalwood, beautiful women are temporary in specific manifestations, but perpetually exist through the natural flow of creation and destruction. In other words, although a particular woman's form is temporary, there will eternally be beautiful women within the material world. Thus, by carefully executing fruitive rituals according to religious scriptures, one can maintain enjoyable contact with women and wealth life after life. In this way, one's sense gratification will be eternal. Shall I continue to the next? Yes?
Yeah, one paragraph more.
Thank you. The Jaimini philosophers further say that there never was a time when the world did not exist as it does today, which implies that there is no supreme controller who has created it. They claim that the arrangement of this world is real and appropriate, and thus it is not illusory. Moreover, they say that there is no eternal knowledge of an original person, perpetual form of the soul. In fact, they say knowledge arises not from some absolute truth, but from the differences among material objects. Knowledge, therefore, is not eternal and is subject to change. The assumption hidden in this statement is that there is no spirit soul who possesses eternal constant knowledge of a single unchanging reality. Rather, the nature of consciousness or knowledge is that it undergoes constant transformation. They state, however, that eternality is not refuted by the perpetually transforming nature of consciousness. Consciousness perpetually exists, they say, but not in the same form.
Yeah, so they see liberation as a state of pure consciousness without any activity or variety. So many such philosophers feel that liberation is an abnormal state of existence, because the liberated souls would be without any activity or enjoyment. We, however, conclude that a path of regulated sense enjoyment would never provide ultimate happiness, but instead would simply award countless miseries. For this reason, even from a materialistic point of view, the attachment is a living being's self-interest. Mashinga, we first will finish the section, and then we have plenty time of questions. That's okay.
Maharaj, it is not so clear, Maharaj. I am still having doubt. Can you please explain this in little more detail?
Well, in simple words, is the Karma Mimamsa theory says that there is only the material world. And the goal of life is to enjoy. And to enjoy you need piety. So you must perform pious activities in your life so that in your next life you can become happy and the next life you will enjoy again and you perform again pious activities. So that's the Karma Mimamsa. Karma Mimamsa says the highest principle is karma, that the reactions and there is no question of liberation and so on. So
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
that is what explained here, and Krishna does not agree with it. Krishna does not agree with it. And now text 17. Tatrapi karmanam kartur asvatantyam salakshate bhaktu sadhuka sukhayo konvarto vishvasamvayat. Can someone read, please?
Although the performer of fruitive activities desires perpetual happiness, it is clearly observed that materialistic workers are often unhappy and only occasionally satisfied, thus proving that they are not independent or in control of their destiny. When a person is always under the superior control of another, how can he expect any valuable results from his own fruitive actions?
So the main point here is the living entities are dependent upon a higher authority. They are not really in control of their destiny. Text 18. In Nadeinam sukam kinshit vichyate vidusham api tatta sadhukam udanam fritahankaram fritahankaranam. So, summary translation, please.
It is observed within the material world that sometimes even an intelligent person is not happy. Similarly, sometimes even the greatest conception of becoming happy through partly performing material activities is simply a useless exhibition of false egoism.
Right. That means it may give happiness to the body and the senses, but not to the soul. The living entities, Bhaktivedanta Sarasvati says, the living entities who are averse to Krishna are always under the controls of the three modes of nature, and you cannot really feel happy under that control. And because of this, they are in knowledge or in ignorance, but whether they are in knowledge or ignorance, they do not become happy. Also, scientists, they think that they will be happy by manipulating the material energy. That Krishna gives arguments that this philosophy does not work. That 19. Yati praptim vihatam cha shananti sukha dukhayo depi adana video yoham Rityuna Prabhavityata. Translation, please.
Even if people know how to achieve happiness and avoid unhappiness, they still do not know the process by which death will not be able to exert its power over them.
Right, so even if one is very learned, is certainly ignorant on how to stop death. 20. Konvarta sukayatyenam kamo vamrityu antike agatam niyamanasya vatyasyeva natushchitam. Translation, please.
Death is not at all pleasing, and since everyone is exactly like a condemned man being led to the place of execution, what possible happiness can people derive from the material objects or the gratification they provide?
Yes, a man who is condemned to die cannot enjoy even if he is given a sumptuous meal placed before him. He cannot feel happiness. The belief that wealth and sense gratification can give one happiness in this world of birth and death is herein refuted. Text 21. Shutam sadristavatustam sparta surya jaya vyayai bhavantaraya kamatvam krishivassapi nishvalam. Translation, please.
That material happiness of which we hear, such as promotion to heavenly planets for celestial enjoyment, is just like that material happiness we have already experienced.
Yeah.
Both are polluted by jealousy, envy, decay, and death. And therefore, just as an attempt to raise crops from fruitless, raised crops becomes fruitless if there are many problems like crop disease, insect plague, or drought. Similarly, the attempt to attain material happiness, either on earth or in the heavenly planets, is always fruitless because of innumerable obstacles.
Right. So after concluding that there is no happiness in this world, is being described that there is no happiness in the heavenly planets as well. In heaven, one person is envious of another's happiness. There is destruction when one's accumulated piety is exhausted. You have to come back. So we will stop here for today and now have 10 minutes pause. It's now 4:01. So at 4:15 in 40 minutes we resume and then we will have discussion. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Hare Krishna, we will resume.
Recording in progress.
So for text 21, that was the last text we read. There, I just want to read Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj's purport, but I read a verse again so that we get the context again. The material happiness that is available in the heavenly planets is discussed in the Vedas, but it is simply a royal version of the happiness found on earth. Life here and life in heaven are both polluted by envy, deterioration and death, just as a farmer has to contend with many problems while growing crops, such as drought or the attacks of insects. Similarly, the attempt to become happy, whether on earth or in heaven, is fraught with many difficulties. So the purport. When the farmer plants his crops, he has to worry about so many potential problems, such as defective seeds, drought, plagues of insects, excessive heat and so on. Similarly, the attempt of enjoying happiness in this world, whether on earth or in heaven, is accompanied by anxiety due to jealousy, cheating and so on. When conditioned souls interact, there is not really competition and envy, because that is the very nature of the material existence. Due to the influence of time, no position within the material world is stable, and so when there are reverses, violence and intrigue create great disturbances, both here and in heaven. Even the attempt to attain a heavenly destination is also fraught with many difficulties. Therefore, one should inquire about the eternal abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is far beyond the disturbance of the material world. So that ends this section of today. And before there are questions, I have a few points that we could pick up from the purport. First, we have these duties of a disciple. 10 points. Not expect any respect for himself, not envy anyone, should be expert, free from material attachment, eager to engage in devotional service, not finding fault with others, avoid idle talks, that not think himself to be the enjoyer of his wife, children, land, and so on, not try to demand respect from others, become free from envy, laziness, and material attachment. One should be inquisitive, devoid of pride, truthful, and steady in determination. So the question is, if you hear all these points, do I want that? Do I want to develop these qualities? And then that's the first point. A second point is, also scientists think that they will happy by manipulating the material energy. Are we still thinking that we will become happy by manipulating the material energy? Because this section, first, Varnashram, doing one's duty, accepting a spiritual master, and then Jolly, by acting in the Varnashram and following the duties, and trying to develop these duties of a disciple, one comes to Jnana, and then one gets realizations that the real knowledge destroying illusion. So it seems in our devotional service we are also going through these phases that we start to act in devotional service, and gradually we get knowledge. So any comments on this point? Pavitra, yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for your wonderful explanation. Maharaj, we are told in the Bhagavad Gita that those living entities who pass away in the mode of goodness goes to the heavenly planets. Those in the mode of passion come to the earthly planets. And those in the mode of ignorance either take animal species or go to the hellish planets. So I'm just wondering, those entities who pass away go to the heavenly planets, why should they be envious of each other or have jealousy of each other? Because they are in the mood of goodness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it's said also in Bhagavad Gita, because that's not the only verse of Bhagavad Gita, there are many others. And it is said, yes, in this world, the pure mode of goodness does not exist. There is always fight for prominence between the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance. That means that those in the mode of goodness are predominantly in the mode of goodness, but not in pure goodness. There is influence of the other modes, and that means that there is envy, which is more subtle than those in passion or in ignorance, but there is still envy. There's that answer that point, Pavitra?
Excellent, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, yeah. Mother Prabhupada, Priya, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was trying to understand the connection between these different points about spiritual masters, because we heard about the 24 spiritual masters that Dr. Chida encountered. And then at the end of that, he said that one may not be able to get complete knowledge from a single spiritual master. And then now Krishna is emphasizing the importance of the spiritual master and serving the spiritual master as a good disciple. So I'm just wondering, I was just, my speculation at least was that because that part before the 24 gurus, it started off saying that Krishna said that one can actually be one's own instructing spiritual master just by, observing the material world, analyzing it, and coming to conclusions, as Dattatreya the Avadut Brahmin did. He gave that as an example. So I was thinking that, okay, he's saying you can be your own instructing spiritual master, but then the conclusion is that, but you may need more than one spiritual master. In other words, you can't just on your own, you, one instructing spiritual master for yourself, can't get complete knowledge. And therefore, it seems like now he's emphasizing that you need a spiritual master outside of yourself. You need to actually be a disciple of someone else. Is that correct? Or
well, you missed my introduction, and I did address that a bit, because we are at chapter 7-9. Chapter 7-9 were very much about attachment. And you can create attachment by studying these 24 gurus. So Dattatreya was so detached that his mind was fixed on the Supreme Lord, and he did not deal with the material world at all. But how to come to that level of detachment, that issue is addressed here. So Dattatreya, he was an incarnation of the Lord. But ordinarily, by learning from these 24 spiritual masters, if one has no knowledge about Sambandha Jnana, then it's not going to work. Dattatreya had that knowledge. But ordinary, that will not work. Dattatreya had no need of a spiritual master. He was a Supreme Lord and was empowered by the Supreme Lord. So that's how to come to that level of detachment is explained here. And therefore, this chapter 10 starts in a very practical sense. Varna ashram. Act according to your nature, and then the results come, and you are also detached from the results, and by being detached from the results of one's work, one can go to the next level in the yoga ladder. One can come from karma and jnana, and that is what we are discussing here in this chapter. Does that help a bit?
So then in order for Sankhya Yoga to work, as it did for Dattatreya, one already has to be on the level of realization that's above Varnashram and all that.
Yeah, there must be Sambandha Jnana, because Dattatreya was so detached that he fixed his mind on the Supreme Lord. How can he fix his mind on the Supreme Lord? He must know about the Supreme Lord. Therefore you need a spiritual master. That is for sure. But Dattatreya did not need a spiritual master. It was, yeah.
This brings up another related question that I had in my mind when we were looking at Pingala. So I'm wondering how Pingala was able to come to her such sublime realizations, because the explanation given there is that due to frustration, she became indifferent and then detached, and then she was able to think of Krishna. But we see that many people, they try to enjoy materially and they become frustrated, but they don't come to Krishna consciousness as a result of their frustration.
Yeah.
So what was Pingala's credit? Like, she must have had some previous piety or devotional service or something. Even she said that. I must have done something to please the Lord.
Yeah,
You know what it was?
It seems Pingala was a devotee, probably a devotee in previous life, but I don't know her previous life. But she was a devotee, but she was doing this job which was sinful and so on, and she could not get out of it. So yeah, that's the only thing I know. She was a devotee, so she had already that relationship, or she wanted to develop a relationship with Krishna. But of course she could not let go her attachment to the Supreme Lord, and then Krishna frustrated her in her profession, and she got realization. So that's amazing. It's an amazing story how Krishna even helps you in the most abominable situations. It's amazing, that story. Yeah. Any further point? Prabhupada, please.
That's okay. Thank you, Maharaj. So she was kind of a devotee before, even as a prostitute, she was a devotee?
Yeah, she had faith in Krishna. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
Right. So, Mother Castro, you can please.
Maharaj, I have two questions. One is related to verse 11 translation.
Verse 11 translation. Yeah.
It is said that if someone has the cultivation of knowledge, they approach Supreme Personality of Godhead within oneself. And understanding Lord's pure transcendental existence, one gradually give a false vision of the material world as an independent reality. But uh, but if someone has already realized the Supreme Lord and their relationship with Him, what, why is it still a gradual process to give up the material world? Isn't
Well,
it automatic?
these two things do not go really together. Realize there's a difference between knowing and realizing. Realizing one's relationship with Krishna means living in one's relationship with Krishna, and that's only possible when the heart is pure. Therefore, we heard that in the second count of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Brahma sat on the lotus flower, and he didn't get transcendental knowledge and realization immediately. Krishna pronounced the word tapa. He has to do austerity, and that austerity is devotional service and purifying oneself. And when he was completely pure, Krishna gave him the Shatur Sloki of the Bhagavatam, and then he got the knowledge and the realization. So that's not going together. That realization comes really when the heart is pure. Does that help?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And if you had another point?
Yes. In Govardhan Lila, Krishna actually teaches the philosophy of karma mimamsa,
Yeah,
but
right.
here he's refuting it. So how do we understand?
Yeah. That's interesting. Good that you bring that up. So in the Govardhan Lila, he wants to convinces Nanda Maharaj to use all the paraphernalia collected for the Indra Puja for the worship of Govardhan. And he jokingly uses arguments of karma mimamsa, that he says this Indra, he is not really in charge. He must give the reactions of the living entities of their past activities. So if they are pious, he has to give rain. So he's not independent. So he's saying the law of karma is supreme there. And that looks like karma mimamsa philosophy, and he's using that to convince his father. But of course, he says many things there. He says to his father, why this Indra, why should you worship him? And he gives water, the rain comes, but also to the ocean. So what's the point? He must give. He's using this karma mimamsa philosophy to convince his father. He has a purpose there. But that does not mean that he agrees with that philosophy, but he uses it to his father. A little cheating. And that's Krishna, yes, facilitating his pastimes to convince his father. It's, of course, that cheating propensity that we have seen in Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna says to Arjuna, Name Bhaktya Pranashati, my devotee never perishes. Please announce it to the whole world. And then Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan brings some verses between the verses of the Gita, and then Arjuna says to Krishna, you asked me to declare this to the whole world, that your devotee will never perish. Why are you not doing it yourself? And then Krishna replies, yes, but I'm from Mathura, and those from Mathura, they are known as cheaters. But we will never cheat those whom we love. And that's the reality. Krishna cheats everyone in this world with the three modes of nature. But when we become his devotee, then we are not cheated. We see the reality. And Krishna uses that philosophy in a joking way to convince his father. That's all. Is that how Lucas do? Thank you.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, thank you. Good, then we hear now from Marshing.
Thank you, Maharaj. This is in relation to Prabhupada Priya Mataji's question. And it is seen most of the time, like I can talk of myself. I see so many things happening from morning to night in day-to-day life. But we don't get a message.
Right.
And we do not assimilate. I do not assimilate that message. How we find in the case of the Tatreya, he was seeing the things and he was taking the message all together, like Ashoka or Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha, how he was seeing the things in the perspective and getting the message. So this is not general and not possible for common way. Usually people don't see like that. So we cannot rely that we will get our message like this. So it is better to take shelter of the proper guru and get the guidance and clear cut guidance and follow that. That is more safer than this path.
Yeah, I fully agree. If you read his duties of a disciple, then I think, am I really serious? That like you say, we see so many things, and do we think in these terms? Mostly we are going with the waves of Maya, but anyway, therefore we must engage us fully in devotional service and try our best. That that. But anyway, it gets better little by little. It's step by step. Thank you, Singapore. I just agree with you. What can I do? I'm not better than anyone else.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank
No,
you.
I am just trying to understand, make my understanding better in this
Yeah,
association.
yeah,
Thank you.
but I agree. So we have now Chaitanya Prema, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandava Pranam, so good to see you. Yes, with regards to Mother Kasturika's question of Krishna speaking Mimamsa philosophy to his father,
Yeah,
trying to convince him. I
okay.
was also thinking that just like an expert preacher, when he gets to a particular field, he needs to know the frame of reference or the people he's addressing. Then he tells them what they know. He takes them from what they know, and with what they know, he's able to convince them. Then he takes them beyond. You see,
Nice.
so I was thinking that as preachers
Very
also
nice. Wonderful.
we have to learn situational analysis when we are preaching to people. We have to know the type of people we are preaching to. Then we should know how to approach them by letting them know that we know what they know, but
Yeah,
they see something more, so
yeah,
they can listen you well. That was
yeah.
Hare Krishna.
That's a good point. Become expert in using their
Wonderful point, Prabhu.
become expert in using their philosophy to go beyond them. That thank you, Chaitanya Prema. Very nice point. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. It's a very wonderful point. Nice explanation.
So, Mother Prabhupada, Priya, please.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Krishna starts off in text one of this chapter. He's talking about and he's advising varnashram, living without personal desire, practicing varnashram dharma. But then he just very quickly jumps up to, desirelessness and approaching a spiritual master and being a good disciple.
Yeah.
So it almost seems like he's not giving a lot of emphasis on varnashram at all.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like using it as a starting point, and then, but actually, this is the better thing to do.
Yeah, Lord Chaitanya is also Krishna, and in his talks with Ramananda Roy, he said, yes, this varnashram, external, and yat karosi yatasyas, yat yosi dadasyat, external. Patram pushvam phalam tram, better, but still external. And then finally, until he came to the rasas, describing the 5 rasas, and then he felt satisfied. So that's the purpose, to engage in feelings of love with Krishna in this bhakti ras, and that is what we want. That is what Krishna wants, and he leads us to that, and we will see in the next chapter. It will go about how from the conditioned state to the liberated state, and then chapter 12 he says now you go beyond it, and he starts to speak about the Vrajavasis, and we will be back in Vrindavan in chapter 12. We will hear a lot about Vrindavan again.
Maharaj,
Yes.
one question seriously comes here is Srila Prabhupada has established this pure devotional service mood and the temples and the congregation and serious study of the books and all these activities. Then why is he is talking about the varnashram? I am a little confused and I don't understand how to implement, because suppose some community and the congregation is nicely studying Srila Prabhupada books and preaching and practicing, then how do it go to the platform of varnashram? Because as per your talk also today, I could understand little, because I was always confused all these years. I hear about varnashram, then I don't understand what the varnashram really means. So after your this one more talk today, I could get some idea. So please, will you put little light on this about this Varnashram? Because if we are practicing Srila Prabhupada's instructions and sincerely following, then where is this Varnashram stands?
So there is a lot to say about Varnashram, but I tell you, yesterday morning I had a class for the devotees in Lviv in the Ukraine, and then the week before for devotees in Odessa, and this war is going on there. Is it easy to practice spiritual life when every moment these missiles can come down on your head? It's hell. So Prabhupada foresaw this. Varnashram is a peaceful society in which we can practice devotional service. So he wanted us that we develop this occupation and have our own society and be peaceful and focus on our spiritual life. But this world is becoming so hellish. So much anxiety. I see that also people, it's not only in the Ukraine, but I see people in general are so stressed out that so advanced with their computers and so on, but full of stress. So if we can develop this Varnashram, then we will have a peaceful society that in which we have our own food. We don't have to look for food for protection. That's all arranged in Varnashram. And therefore it is important. But there are also other reasons why Srila Prabhupada said, I did only 50% of my work. That's because in Kali Yuga everyone is so disturbed. It's so difficult to practice spiritual life in Kali Yuga. Therefore, we need also this Varnashram will also engage those who cannot accept immediately the practice of bhakti, and also engage them and elevate them. So there's also a preaching mood, a mood of compassion. Does that help, Master?
Maharaj, I agree with you. I have a challenge which I want to share with you. I am preaching in a city, Hyderabad, and a nice congregation, sincere people, but I find a challenge to convince them, to commit them to Srila Prabhupada's movement for preaching. Although they are reading, they are understanding philosophy, but they are so much caught up in their material commitments, and in trying to balance that, they are unable to properly chant even. So where is the question of convincing them for Varnashram?
Yeah.
I am struggling with the devotees, those who are aspiring for initiation, but they are not able to commit. Like Janmashtami is coming, if I ask them that come and then we have to give 4 days, 5 days, 2 days time, and we have to do this, and they don't find time.
Yeah.
They can't make time.
They struggle just to survive
It's
in their occupation.
yes,
And that's a problem.
it's a
But
big problem, Maharaj, big challenge.
but we can only offer it and
Yes,
try to develop it and try to do our best.
yes, true.
Srila Prabhupada said, not everyone will take to it. Maximum 2-3% of the population, but if 2-3% takes to it, that will be our greatest success, Srila Prabhupada said. So we do our best. Thank you, Master Prabhu. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Mother Prabhupada Priya, you want to add something, please?
No, I think my hand was up from before.
Okay, good. Then we will stop here. And I look forward to see you tomorrow to finish the last part of this chapter. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Sai
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare
Recording stopped.
Thank you,
Bala
Maharaj.
Pranams. Hare